We're getting ready to start the Ordinance Committee meeting. Present, we do have a quorum. We have Councilor David Bartley, Councilor Linda Vacan, and myself, Councilor Israel Rivera. Online, we have our City Solicitor Brenna Leary and one of our department heads, Alex from Licensing Board. We also just were graced with the presence of Councilor McGrath Smith and Councilor Jenny Rivera. In council chambers, we also have Councilor Patty Devine.
Mr. Chair, do you want a motion?
Sure, we can
tell me.
entertain item one as just to take up the special permit for the application, the public hearing for mass cannabis growers.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to take one off the table and open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item one was public hearing for a special permit application of mass cannabis growers cooperative LLC at Cabot Street, to permit a marijuana cultivation facility. With us, we have Ezra. If you'd like to take the floor, just to update us and bring us to the next level. And if there's anyone in the public that would like to speak up in person, please feel free to raise your hand. And online, the option is to also raise your digital hand. So this is a public hearing. I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands that they have that offer for them. Thank you.
Good evening, Ordinance Committee. Thank you very much for having me. I'm going to be solo for these first two agenda items, which is mass cannabis growers, a continuation of their special permit, as well as Blue Fox brands coming up next.
So real quick, do you prefer if we take them up as a package?
Just one at a time.
One at a time? All right.
Do you mind?
No, I don't mind.
They are very similar, so I'm going to, and they're in the same building, so I'm going to explain the basics, which will make the second one go faster, I think. So in the first ordinance hearing for mass cannabis cooperative, we received a letter from the planning board with some items that planning was wanting addressed, which I'm happy to do in this. But first of all, let me just explain again what this is. So this is a tenant space at the 1 Cabot Street building, which is was formerly occupied by a licensed operator named Milltown Agriculture. They since dropped their lease of this location because they stopped their cultivation operations, and the cooperative, Mass Cannabis Growers Cooperative, is taking over that space. So the only construction required for this permit is to close off a doorway. All of the security provisions, the parking, the site plan, the construction, the cameras are all staying in place. So I will go over just some basics. I didn't include a locus plan with the original submission. A locus plan just shows where it is in the city, and we have one here that I submitted. So this just shows the location, which I think everyone's familiar with. Survey plan is also available. So here's a survey plan updated for Mass Cannabis Cooperative, which is taking over this space. Here is Cabot Street. And as you can see, the code requires that for every 4 employees, there is 1 parking space. So we don't anticipate more than 5 people being here at any given time. So they only have 2 parking spaces allotted to them. An improvements plan, Jeff Percott requested, which basically means what is going to happen to this space. And as I mentioned, the improvements are that there was a single doorway that went from one part of the space to another, and they're closing off that doorway so they can lease that space without the door being in between. So that is the only improvement. A separate existing conditions plan, so that is all in here as well. I asked the architect to just completely update the plans so that we could see what it currently looks like and what the proposed changes are. So it's very difficult to see, but really this is already in place This already looks like this and was previously approved for this plan. It's just there's a doorway right here. One single doorway right here, which is being closed off so that this space can be available. He asked for square footage of each room. So we have added here, you can see 225 square feet. This gives a good idea too of what this space kind of looks like. They're called the catacombs. So all of these chambers are these little bricked rooms in the facility in this large open space. And each one of these is a grow room. A detail sheet is also required, and so a detail sheet just shows what is the construction going to look like. So as you can see here, this is a doorway, and this is what it looks like when it gets closed over. So the details are pretty minimal, and here's what a wall will look like. So insulation, sheetrock, and the studs. So pretty basic in terms of detail sheet. Again, that also serves as the elevation, so it shows a vertical elevation of what the work is proposed. So this area here is the elevation, which was required. Lastly, I showed the parking lot, so that's number 9. The photometric plan is here as well, and I will pop that up. This is a photometric plan. So the special permit bylaw requires that if there are proposed external changes to lighting, that a photometric plan is required for submittal. In this case, we're not actually changing any exterior lighting. As I said, the only change is a single doorway. But I thought I'd have one drawn up for this whole location regardless. So these just show the foot candles of the existing lights. And you can see here, these are the types of lights. They're just these sort of standard street lights on poles. And the lighting of this area, as you can see, based on all these numbers that show the contiguous lighting around the site, it's pretty well lit. There are some questions regarding the narrative. So this is a cooperative. Cooperative is multiple different entities that come together to own a single license. Because Brandon and his team have been working on this for so long, it's gotten kind of smaller and smaller. And this is only less than 2,000 square feet of cultivation. So they started with the plan to do 50,000 or something and have slowly gotten tiny. So in terms of access to this by all the different members, because there are currently only 2 cultivators who are going to be accessing this space on a daily basis, the cultivators will serve as the agented employees that will escort any visitors. So if any of the 15 members of all of the co-op entities wish to visit the site and access space, they will be led around by a cultivator because they're familiar with the space. So that's how they will access that space. He asked for a little more detail on a description of activities. So I don't know if, I do recommend if anybody's in the area to stop by and look at the space. It's an interesting historical part of the building, but it does have some wide open spaces. And first of all, when the plants are grown to harvest date in these little catacombs, the lights are turned off, the plants are cut and hung upside down, and they're dried in place. So the drying happens there. The plants are then brought to an open area, I can show you on the plan, which allows for, so here are the catacombs, and here is a big open area that you walk into when you first arrive, and then these are storage. So these 3 rooms are all of the post-cultivation processing. Once the plants are dried, they are brought in here for trimming, and then they are stored and cured in the other 2 rooms. Once they are finished and completely ready to go out for sale, they are stored, labeled in the vault, and then the vault to the Sally Port is where they would get picked up. You did have questions about the generator. So there are two facility-wide, building-wide backups for this building. There is a large battery that backs up all of the cameras in the entire building. Because there's multiple tenants in this building, they have to share common area security footage. So product has to be on camera from the moment, all through the process, and as it's moving through the building and then moving through the site. So all the different tenants have to have access to all the cameras. So therefore, there is a single storage battery that allows for the required 4 hours of camera surveillance backup in the event of a power outage. So I know power outages are very rare in Holyoke, but we still have to have that. And then after that 4-hour period, if the power is still out and the battery goes down, then there is a building generator, a diesel generator. So there are two backup energy plans on top of the very robust turbines from the Holyoke Dam. The police approval letter has been one of the more challenging items, and we had a great email today from Sergeant Reardon who said, you know, I approved you guys on site and I approved you in this email, let me know what else you need. And we said, could you please give us the letter? So he just has not, he still hasn't given it to us in writing. Again, I know that planning wanted this to be an updated approval, even though there are no changes to security. So he did come on site and he did go through our entire plan. So because the ordinance and city council can't now go back to planning and get their sign off on this, the board has to either decide to vote with without this letter, or I would ask, and I say it here in the narrative, that we're happy to provide this letter. There are many months that have to go by before permits are gained and the inspections have to occur through the state. So it's many months before we can even have plants or anything that needs to be secured in the building. So if the board were to vote yes, that a condition could be made that that letter has to be submitted to the clerk before we're able to operate. That would be my request. The rest is, you saw the square footage of each room. We saw the existing conditions, what the improvements were, photometric, elevation, and details. I had a typo on the timeline. I said 2025 instead of 2026. So this will be licensed to start growing in 2026, just to give you an idea of the timeline we're at. We saw the parking and then signage. Signage is not required. There's no public aspect to this facility, so there'll be a sign on next to the doorbell in the back entrance, the private entrance that just has their name and a mailbox. So there's no large signage that's required. I also put the addresses of all the owners. And so that submitted document should have all the information, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Just before any questions from anyone in the public? And seeing none, I'll entertain answers from the committee. Our questions, Councilor Vacan.
Thank you. So my question is, with these changes, with this new applicant and the one that we'll be looking at next, will there be a net increase in use of the space when comparing to the past, or a decrease?
That is a good question. So in comparison to the previous tenant in this space, it is net zero change in the amount of space they're using. So they are going to use the whole space, but the current applicant, in this case, the cooperative, will be having fewer people on site. So the previous tenant had a lot of HR people and assistant managers, and was a little bit overemployed there. There was too many staff as part of the issue. So they're, this new company has kind of seen that and said, okay, can we do it with fewer people? So the net impact will be fewer people on site, but hopefully just as much generation of income et cetera.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor McGrath-Smith?
I had a question around underneath remaining questions and comments from the planning board. Number 1, it said during the pre-application meeting, and I remember this from the last time you came in as well, the applicant owner indicated that instead of having 5 1 to 2 member groups, 75% of the space is being taken up by one entity, with 25% being retained by the project owner. Could this please be clarified?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so I didn't touch on that. Thank you for asking that. I didn't touch on that in terms of the division of labor here. Division of ownership as well. Basically, when the cooperative started, the idea was, if you have 50,000 square feet and you have 5 teams, they can each have 10,000 square feet. As the project ran out of capital and downsized, and now they're at 2,000 square feet, one of the cooperative members, because he has held the investment going, he has essentially paid for this operation to stay afloat while it's gotten open, is going to be covering the costs for 75% of that grow space. So he's going to take roughly 1,500 square feet that will be under his control as the primary funder and equity owner, and as opposed to each team having a small 500 square feet. So that's the 75-25 split. The 25% is Brandon Gates, and he will be one of the cultivators on site every day, and will only hold a 500 square foot section of that, roughly. No, it is 500 square feet. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes and no. I would love a little more clarity on. I thought I understood you say that he's covering 75% of it, which if it's 2,000, wouldn't it be 75% of the 2,000?
Mm-hmm. It would be 1,500 square feet of the 2,000
Got it.
square feet.
Okay,
Yeah.
maybe I just misheard you. Now, does that mean that he will have other smaller teams working underneath him in that space? Or does that mean that he is the only team member growing in that 75%, and there is one other team of 1 or 2 in the other 500 square feet?
It is the latter. So typically, if you have just a single entity that's not a cooperative, if you have an owner who is footing the bill for the whole thing, then essentially what is typical in the industry is if they put $1 million in, therefore that company is essentially in debt $1 million back to that investor. So the majority of the profits from that first harvest, from the various harvests that come to fruition, will go back to that primary investor. That's a typical scenario. This is the same idea in that he's saying, look, I'm providing the capital for this. I'm keeping this project going financially, so I want to have 75% of the revenue coming back to me for this. I want to control 75%. So because the rest of the members didn't have the capital to put forward, they agreed to that. And at this point, they're just hoping Brandon can get it open, utilize the capital for that 75%. And then in the future, because there is more space in the building, the hope would be to scale up, and then eventually the members could all have their own 2,000 square feet, for example.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
If there are no other questions, I think for me, just to have a better understanding, Mr. Gates is the owner on paper then?
That's right. Yeah.
And then you have a bunch of other owners, or just one larger chunk owner and then other smaller owners that will be working under Mr. Gates?
Yeah, so it is a very unique model. Like I think I said in the previous hearing, there is, although this was a licensed model that existed when we legalized in 2016, no team has ever opened under this license model because it's very sort of confusing. The cooperative was intended to create a scenario where a bunch of people could join together, have even different locations, so you could have multiple buildings, and you could all be growing in multiple buildings and gather your crop together and then put it into the market, like a farm cooperative. However, when you have such a tiny farm, I mean, this is less than 50% of the smallest cultivation category of licensing. So we've turned this model of what should be a very large farm to a very, very tiny farm. So it doesn't really match the model of, like, why are there so many owners and entities? But in order to be a cooperative, you have to be an LLC or have an entity. So Brandon owns that entity. But then that entity is also, under the cooperative model, has various other entities that are that share the profits from that model.
I think my only question or concern, but which is not real, whatever, it's whatever, but I guess if the guy or the person that's the larger investor owns like 75% of the thing, just decides to get up and just sell portions of it to someone else, that will never come back to us here, in a sense, correct?
If he sells portions of his equity,
75%.
Technically, if there is a change of ownership, the rules in Holyoke do say that you have to come back for a special permit. In fact, it's not even an amendment; it's a brand new special permit.
But the only guy's name here is Mr. Gates, correct or no?
The owners are on the narrative.
Or there's more than just Mr. Gates. The application is just in the name of Mr. Gates.
That's right.
Okay. That's just, and I'm just asking to better understand. That's all it is. If there aren't any other questions, Councilor Bartley?
Yeah, just where are we with the planning board? Did they follow up?
Yes, they had a whole bunch of questions, and it sounds like he kind of answered a lot of them.
Or has the planning board replied to us?
So Jeff Burkott, who's the voice in this case of the planning board, explained that because it has gone to Ordinance Committee, and because this is not traditional, this is not through the planning board itself, but the planning board only does their initial review. Once it has gone to ordinance and the items have then been addressed, it is up to the Ordinance Committee to make a decision on that vote. That the planning board no longer has authority to comment on this. They provide their comments. Theoretically, they're supposed to do it before that, the date of the Ordinance Committee. Jeff did it on the day he sent it over. So it's now that it's been an ordinance, planning board can't technically provide a guidance for you guys.
No, sir.
Yeah, that's news to me, just so you know that. Go ahead, Councilor Bartley.
Yeah, just, okay, and I have no reason to doubt you, but is there no reason why he just didn't send a communication to that effect, or in his communication, did he?
I might
Jeffrey-
have it in an email. Yeah.
Jeffrey has his hand raised real quick. Jeff?
Is that Jeffrey Burgos?
Yes. Go ahead, Jeff.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I just want to confirm, I spoke with Jeff Burkott as well about that. And that was, his position is that once they provide a letter and there are open questions, it's then up to the Ordinance Committee to confirm the open questions are being resolved. Because it wouldn't be up to him to just send a follow-up letter. Any additional reviews based on new information would have to go through a whole new public hearing process with the planning board. So Jeff Burkott can't just sign a letter. Planning board would have to approve the letter through a public hearing.
So did they close their public hearing, Jeff? Yeah, you're telling me that they closed their, you know for a fact they closed their public hearing? Jeff?
Yes, they close it prior to them approving the review letter.
Okey-dokes.
If I could also provide clarity as to why many of the items were not initially submitted. An architect will typically, so I've been informed by the architect, because he was surprised that the photometric plan, the locus plan, the elevations, conditions, all those things were required because there's no changes to the building other than a single doorway. So I helped arrange the submittal, and because the locus plan is unchanged, the survey plan is unchanged, the improvements plan are existing door. Planning asked for that because it is required on a special permit. But an architect typically wouldn't, for any permitting, they wouldn't provide those things because all of the work is on the interior of a building. So when an architect submits something for a permit, they show what's going to be changed, not the rest of it, even though I did end up providing it.
That makes sense, but at the same time, it's a newer project, right? So like, if you weren't someone that's already familiar with the system, wouldn't the architect still have to provide it because it was asked for?
Well, it's a great question. When you have a bylaw, in this case for marijuana, sometimes it's overlapping with things that aren't typically done. So if I have a coffee shop and I want to close up a doorway in the coffee shop, or even a package store or a bar, I would just go to the building department and get a permit for that. And if the building department says, well, let's see the architectural plan, you would only show the part of the plan that needs to be done because you're not changing the site or the sidewalk or the parking or anything like that. So because marijuana is new as an industry, and presumably because the city of Holyoke wanted to cover all of its bases, because it's a new industry, it's requiring things that professionals in the field, architects, engineers, site planners, etc., are not familiar with because they're used to working under circumstances that are far less strict. So when I am needing advice from architects and engineers, they typically will say, no, this isn't submitted. What I've given you is enough. And often I'm battling with them. I'm saying, well, the city is asking for it. And they're saying, well, why are we giving you something that's on the outside of the building when it's not needed? So this is just the awkward interval between prohibition of the substance and legalization, where it becomes similar to a paint factory or a package store or a restaurant or something that if it's built from an empty lot and parking and curb cuts and traffic patterns are all going to be changed, that is common for a special permit. But the majority of any kind of change that happens inside of a building in most towns only goes through a building department and not through special permit. So you're correct, all is required, and I will take full blame for not submitting all of these things at the beginning. In the interest of time, because of the summer recess, I did submit things, and like, for example, the police department letter, I submitted without that because I needed to move it forward in the hopes that you might vote on it without that, or as a condition.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee?
No, I can make a motion to close, sorry.
Councilor Reagan?
I was just going to make a motion to close the public
Okay,
hearing.
there you go.
I entertain
Second.
the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion has passed that we close the public hearing.
Then I'll just make a motion to approve the permit with the condition they get the police approval letter in a timely fashion.
What would be the timely fashion, just in case, Councilor Bartley?
Prior to their, let me see what he's, city council submitted before, okay, in a timely fashion means prior to them operating.
Prior to their opening up doors, all right?
Yeah, operating, cultivating, doing any kind of work whatsoever. They have to get the police approval letter. So
Second.
that'll be the condition.
Do I hear a second for that?
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Awesome. So public hearing is closed. And then the motion to approve the permit with the condition of you guys getting the license or the paperwork signed by the chief before operating.
Thank you very much.
I entertain the motion to take up item 2.
So moved. Public hearing.
Yes, open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 2 is a public hearing too. A special permit application amendment of Blue Fox Brands, 1 Cabot Street marijuana factoring facility, adding a C1D1 extraction booth. And Ezra, I believe you're here to represent this. one
Yes,
as
I
well.
am. Thank you. I'm Ezra Barsbach from Northampton, Massachusetts, and I'm also here to represent this special permit amendment for the company Blue Fox Brands, also at 1 Cabot Street. And we also submitted a special permit application, which the planning board requested some updates to. And in this case, there is no formal process for an amendment, so that anyone was able to tell me. So I submitted documentation for the change because the special permit is already active. And then this is where Burkott came back saying, well, he's determining that an amendment does require all the same repeated documentation as the special permit. So that was easy because I've already submitted that documentation and I just printed it out again and brought it right back to him. So, for example, registrations, licenses, permits, site control, I just reattached the lease that's already active, the special permit that was approved, and the building permits that they used to fit out the space. He's asking for clarification on the Holyoke Fire Department approval. Every special permit has what's called a pre-application meeting where you meet with all departments on a Zoom before you even submit the application. And I asked fire safety whether they wanted those permits secured before the special permit. And because fire department wants the special permit approved before we apply for fire permits, we don't have those permits. So if and when this special permit is approved, we will apply for the fire permits. So if I can back up just a little bit and explain what this is. So this is an active operating facility that already holds a special permit that's active.
For cultivation?
This is for processing,
For
manufacturing.
processing.
They make pre-rolls and they fill vape
Okay.
carts. Their operation is really simplistic. It's just large scale. They just do a lot of it. So they wanted to add to one of their sections of their facility these 2 modular steel rooms that are for extraction. Now, this is very common. Every industry that extracts any kind of plant oils uses these types of rooms. They're called C1D1, which means that they are fire and explosion proof. They're rated nationally, the UL listed for both glass and metal as being safe for storing and utilizing flammable materials. So this is the only thing that's being added to this facility, are these 2 metal rooms that are, one is 300 square feet and one is 100 square feet, so very, very small. And essentially the permitting, the most important permitting around this addition is fire department, right? It's flammable, it is potentially explosive. So if we are approved for this special permit amendment, then essentially we go to the real permitting process, which is the fire department goes through all of the fire code around flammables, how extraction's done, ventilation, fire safety, training, things like that. So we intend to do that. Again, they wanted a revision list, so there are no revisions to this plan. There is only the existing plan and the addition of these 2 metal rooms. The metal rooms are made in a factory off-site, and they're kind of reconstructed in the space.
And within the square footage?
That's right. He wanted include a submission of the locus plan, the survey plan, and improvements. So again, I have, I submitted the site plan. We have the photometric plan. We have somewhere in here the parking plan. There it is. So this is Cabot Street down here. This is Blue Fox Brands. This is on the second floor of the building. It is confusing because when you're at Cabot Street, that is the ground floor. If you've ever driven by, the windows that you see right at ground floor are Blue Fox Brands. However, when you drive into the site and around to the back of the building, it slopes down. So it makes that ground floor the second floor. So Milltown Agriculture, which is now Mass Cooperative Growers, is on the first floor, the basement, around back. So it's actually underneath the space. So Jeff Burkott was confused because he thought they were occupying the same space, but they're just one floor different. Where is my narrative? There we go. The photometric plan. Elevations, so I do have the images, which I actually will show you. Bear with me 1 second. See this? So this is the elevation of the improvements to this. So the special permit is, what is required is to show a 3D drawing. So as you can see, this is a room that exists in and of itself in the space. Let me actually give you, here it is to just give you a sense of where it is in the room. This would be Cabot down here, and it's in the far corner where they intend to put these metal boxes. So, and then here's what this little corner that I just showed you looks like. So here's the large booth, 10 by 30, and this is the small booth, 10 by 10. So if we go back to the specs, as you can see, it's just steel panels with a steel double door and explosion-proof glass. So the employee goes into the booth and brings dry product, so it's ground cannabis product. They put it into a closed loop system. It kind of looks like a pressure cooker, and it's completely closed off, so no gas or flammable liquid is in the air or has is outside of the closed loop system. And the very cold butane or ethanol is then pushed through the material, which dissolves all of the resin off the plant. And then the resin is collected, and then the flammable liquids are then recollected. So they're just used over and over again. It loses about 0.5% each run. So eventually you do have to resupply, but it's all closed, it's in the system. And there's very specific venting for this. So if we go back to our, I could remember where everything is. Here is, and this is the picture that just shows the clean rooms, and I don't want to waste time digging through, but essentially there is a ventilation system here that goes from this booth directly out to the exterior of the building, and then as per fire code for C1D1, the venting has to go to the roof line. So it goes about 60 feet up, and air from this booth is vented to the roof line. Here on this side, the venting goes from here. So the rooms are completely sealed off from the room they're sitting in. All the air is exchanged from the outside. There are alarms in place that if you have a leak, if the pressure's too high, if someone hasn't been there observing or turned any machinery off, there are alarms that are slated to go off, and they do a rapid extraction of all the air. So if there were to be a leak, they just alarms turn on fans, and it sucks all of the air out of that room and takes it right up to the roof line. So that's the sort of fire
And that's
prevention.
what the fire department would be inspecting and signing off on.
That's right. So the
Correct?
fire department needs to make sure that the amount of storage of product stored is the correct quantity, as well as the correct location for storage. And they need to know that that ventilation requires a certain, cubic feet per minute of extraction. So they have their fire code, and they'll have to go through a lot more details of this.
We'll leave it to the fire guys.
Yes, yeah. And then again, parking, because this is not a huge change, it's actually, here is the 2, 4, 6, 7 spots. Again, this is 4 employees for each one spot. So 7 parking spaces would mean a total of 28 employees. Currently, there are 19 employees at Blue Fox Brands, and this actually would add a single employee who is the expert, the lab extraction manager who runs the extraction. So it only adds 1 person in this case, so it brings the total employee count to 20. So they still have 8, essentially 8 employees they could add on and still retain this parking. Sign package, that's the final thing. Again, this is not a public space. It will have no signage visible from the road. They do have a name on a mailbox, and that's about it.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I'm okay with all this, except for, where are we with the fire department? Say that again?
Yeah, so, all flammable materials in any manufacturing space require fire permits. Those permits are required in order to store and use any flammable materials. So fire permitting is the same as building permitting. So if you're going to do construction and you have a special permit, you have to get a special permit first, and then you go apply for the building permits. So in the case of fire, we have to get a special permit amendment first. We're amending our special permit to add this, but then the fire permits are required afterwards.
Okay, so if and when we do this, then we have to make the special permit, there has to be a condition on the permit that you're gonna get your licenses your permits from the fire department. I understand in terms of their procedure, you're saying you need a special permit first in order to apply.
Mhm.
Is that true?
You need a special permit first in order to apply for the fire permits, correct? In this
Yes,
case.
it's true.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's not, it wouldn't, go ahead. Well, it's not in a condition. It wouldn't be a condition because, for example, if it's a building permit, you can get a special permit completely approved before you go get a building permit. So it's not that it's approval upon getting these, as a condition upon getting the permit. It's syntactical, but it's either way, it's the next step, and the next step can't occur unless this step occurs. So I don't think it has to be a condition of the special permit being approved.
The prerequisite.
It is a prerequisite.
Okay. all right.
Is that on the
I don't want to
ordinance?
get into semantics, but we're going down a rabbit hole right now. So, okay, but what I'm saying is that I realize it's probably understood, but I wouldn't feel comfortable voting on this. I heard what you said, but I don't have anything from the fire department saying that what you said is accurate, just like I have nothing from Mr. Burkott saying this. I have from Mr. Anderson Burgos, which is not Mr. Burkott. So Mr. Burkott, on the first one, doesn't get back to us. It doesn't say emphatically, oh, we did this letter, and you, the city council, don't really have to go by it. You could have just ignored it. Oh, okay. Well, that would have been nice to know on May 28th, but we didn't know that. Now we know that.
Yeah.
What you're saying is that the same is true for the fire department. As a prerequisite, you have to get a special permit in order to apply for the fire department permits. So I'm not going to vote for this unless there's a condition on this that any special permit granted by the city council is going to be subject to a permit from the Holyoke Fire Department.
Yes, but I'll clarify one thing, which is if we take marijuana out of the equation, which creates a bylaw that's unique in the city of Holyoke, and we insert in it, for example, that someone's going to make a rose oil. So they gather roses and they dry the petals, and then they use a C1D1 extraction booth to extract the oils from that rose. That company in Holyoke would not need a special permit. That's a manufacturing. Manufacturing is allowed by right. Any building that you do requires a building permit. Any use of flammable chemicals requires a fire permit. So it's not de facto a prerequisite of a fire permit that a special permit is granted. Most companies in this situation just would go get a fire permit. So that's partly why it's confusing to ordinance, is you're saying like, well, why should I vote on something if I don't know if the fire department's going to approve it? Well, this is an overlap of confusing rules because marijuana, they wanted to be extra safe and make everyone go through a special permit. And now we're confronting one of those scenarios where like, well, why are we making you guys approve the special permit when the fire department doesn't? Well, it's because that's what the fire department usually would do. In any other kind of industry, a paint factory using chemicals, they don't require a special permit. They would require fire permits and they would just go straight to the fire department. So the onus is on you to like vote, but luckily it's just another safety measure in terms of the bylaw because they're saying, well, we want you guys to know what's going on, but don't worry, the fire department is actually in charge of what is the code around this this new addition, the C1D1 lab. There's a tertiary safety measure, and that is the state, the CCC, also cannot inspect this or approve it without the special permit and without the fire permits and without a police approval letter. So even if you vote and say all these conditions have to be met, those same conditions are required for the state. So the state won't let this proceed to operation without approval, according to the bylaw, without a fire permit, without a fire inspection, without police approval, police inspection. All the same things have to happen. It's just sort of overlap for safety.
Believe it or not, I actually understand that.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I do also understand it to a certain extent, but there's also the what under what ordinances is that? Like what policy?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Councilor Bacon.
It's our marijuana ordinance specifically. It requires that if there's any amendment to a special permit, they have to come back in.
No, I understand, but that piece, I think the question to me is where fire can't give somebody a fire permit without us approving it.
Is because of the way we wrote the ordinance.
Can you elaborate?
In this situation, we required the marijuana people to come in if they're amending their special permit at all.
Okay.
If we hadn't added that to our ordinance, they would just be going to fire in the state.
Well, but I get that, but why? What's stopping fire from giving them any information or even doing any other permitting without coming to, like, what law, what ordinance is saying that? Because I don't hear that yet.
There is actually nothing stopping them. So we could,
Right.
and I am working on the permits.
So that's what I'm understanding. There's nothing stopping them from actually doing it other
Yeah.
than saying we would want you to do this first.
Yes, other than me asking, would you like me to actually secure the permits for fire before we go through this process? And he said, no, you should get it approved by ordinance and then apply for the permits and we'll inspect it.
Councilman Bacon.
I would just say, I don't think it hurts anything to make it a condition. I mean, it's just stating what will happen anyway. So
No, yeah, I
if we
agree.
feel more secure doing it that way, it's
No,
just putting in writing what,
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm just trying to think of the process so that way in the future we can mitigate the process and make it more clearer, if anything. But yes.
But that would be for another day, right?
Yeah, that's for another day. That's not for today. It's just for me to better understand.
And if I may, what I think you're questioning here is, why do you guys have to sign off on this if it's the fire department who ultimately chooses, right? And that is exactly what the fire department is feeling. Because I'm saying, hey, can I get a permit, a fire permit for this? And he's saying, well, the whole ordinance, and city council and planning board has to sign off first. So I don't
Yeah,
want to give a
but-
permit.
so
I
there's-
don't know what they're going to do.
There is a common occurrence where everyone kind of like divvies off and pushes the work towards the council when they can actually take the initiative and do some of the work themselves when it comes
Yeah.
to that, right?
Amen,
And,
brother.
and it's multiple times where people come to us and ask us why would we allocate the funding when they know darn well that we can't allocate funding ourselves.
Yeah.
So again, there are different departments that can take the onus on themselves and take the initiative to get things done. So that way, when we make decisions, we can make informed, educated decisions versus going on a whim and adding conditions. That's the only piece for me. But on the motion, I guess, if anybody else has any other questions.
Is there any public? I don't know.
I guess the public.
All right, and then anyone online for the public? Anyone in person?
I can make a motion to close the public hearing.
Yes.
Second.
Motion to close the public hearing. Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
And I'll make a motion to approve the permit, I guess, to make it obvious, subject to the applicant getting his fire department permits.
Second.
So there's a motion made to a permit approval with the condition of getting the fire department permits after we approve them, the special permit, and it got seconded. All in favor?
Oh, so, Mr. Chair,
Aye.
just so we're clear.
Real quick.
So I think you said the word before, because I said in a timely fashion in the last motion. So I say they need the fire department permits prior to they commence operations.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, is that fair?
That's fair. That
Is
makes
that
sense.
better to say it that way?
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right.
I'll second
So seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
That's it. So motion to close the public hearing was already voted on.
Yep.
The permit has been approved with the conditions that were stated. There are also these 7 other conditions, but I think that's for another day as well. Am I correct, Councilor Bacon? The conditions that are attached to once we approve?
We have the standard conditions that we've always put on every other special permit. In a case of an amendment, we would say that we retain them.
Okay.
In our prior vote, we'd have to reopen, and we'd have to reconsider our action to add in the 7 standard
Well-
conditions, which would probably be prudent, because we've done that with every other single app.
Well, truthfully, just a point of order.
Councilor
Can't
Bartley.
we just do that tomorrow night? I mean, you're okay with that, right? I mean,
That's
Well, I was
fine.
just gonna say, reconsider our action now and add the 7 to the prior approval of the special permit. It'll take us a minute,
okay, folks.
whatever,
Okay.
Is that a motion?
sure.
And then a second? From somebody?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then this applies to both.
So the motion is now to add the 7 standard conditions to the initial approval of, whatever the name,
Blue Fox Brands and
the amendment to, the amendment is Blue Fox Brands.
Correct.
What is the first one?
A special permit, mass
And amend
Co-op.
the mass cannabis,
growers cooperative.
so then I hear a
to
second.
add the regular,
To add the marijuana standards, conditions. I hear a second.
Second.
All in favor?
aye.
And then I'll just read the conditions real quick, and this is for both of them. Number 1, that the owner of the building always pay the commercial property tax rate to the extent allowed by federal, state, and local laws for the duration of special permit. That the business retains a minimum 30% Holic residence for non-security jobs. That the hiring preference be given to security personnel that are retired Holic police or a retired member of another police department that now lives in the city of Holyoke. There shall be no marijuana consumption allowed on site. That the hours of operation be set in accordance to the ordinance. That the applicant must abide by Mass General Law guidance from the Cannabis Control Commission. That the petitioner applicant shall conform with the city and state health rules, laws, and regulations, including odor nuisance controls for the duration of the permit. And lastly, that if substantial progress has not occurred within 2 years of issuance of the special permit, an extension shall be required. That'll be all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If I could make one final comment, and that would be changing the ordinance would address so many of these confusing concerns around
Yes.
marijuana. And I know the mayor wants to add social consumption, so it will have to be changed eventually, and I'd be happy to help with wording.
Thank you.
Thank you very
To
much.
change other things too.
A motion to take number 3 off the table and
Second,
open the public hearing, please.
All in favor?
aye.
Item 3 is a continuance of the public hearing that was filed by Councilor Devine. Order that a public hearing be held inviting the Planning Department, Health Conservation Department, and Ordinance Committee to hear the pros and cons of the possibility, including any additional wording, keeping the backyard hens ordinance continued from 5/21/25. So there's a couple things here. One, we were waiting on a response back from, I believe it was the Planning Commission, who did respond. I'm not sure if I have that here. Let me see real quick. Do I have that here, Jeff? Just to be sure. There's a bunch of paperwork with 3.
Yeah, it should be in your packet.
Okay, dear Councilor Rivera, May 27, 2025, Planning Board voted unanimously to recommend that the City Council adopt the above reference amendment to the Holyoke zoning ordinance. As was the case when the question of backyard hens was last before the Planning Board and City Council in 2020, the bulk of the ordinance amendments need to authorize and regulate backyard hens are a matter governed by the Holyoke General Code of Ordinances, not by zoning ordinance. Thus fall outside the purview of the Planning Board. Therefore, the attached draft, identical to our 2000 draft, includes only the conforming changes to the ordinance necessary to effectuate the policy change embodied in broader ordinance amendment. Through our role in amending city ordinances to allow backyard hens, which is though our role is to allow backyard hens with is limited, we agree that the following backyard hens with appropriate regulatory safeguards is desirable. Neighboring cities and towns have been successful in allowing for backyard chickens and that they can have positive impact on food security, education, and pest control. As you can see from the Planning Board's attached 2020 recommendation, the opinion has not changed with the passage of time or with significant changes to the Planning Board membership in the interim. So we've already had public hearing where we've had department heads in, and we've also had residents in, and now we have a letter from the planning department weighing in as well. Today, the hope is to entertain closing the public hearing, but before I recognize you, Councilor Bacon, I'll recognize Councilor Devine because she filed the order, and just to see where things are with her and see if she'd like to elaborate, just to see.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just received that planning board letter today, so I kind of briefly read through it. Several people have asked me to file that order, and I understand completely the department heads that have answered, and they are not crazy about the idea. So what I was thinking of doing, but again, the people, one of them who we all think the world of is Libby Hernandez. She's on the DPW board. They have a meeting tonight, so there's no way she can be here at the same time. One of the things I was thinking of again, I understand where the department heads were coming from, with the exception of planning. And I don't have a problem if you close the public hearing. What I'd like to ask is, if you close the public hearing, and I do have an idea of what I'd like to present, not as part of the ordinance, but perhaps another ordinance, can I do that, or just do it at another time?
So I would say that you can do that, but what would happen, it would be asking to see what we do with this particular. So I guess for today, we could close the public hearing and table it just to see what you're trying to do in the future. And then from there, we can probably leave to withdraw or whatever approach wants to be taken. But it's just, we've moved in certain directions right now, and there are certain voices that have been heard. And
That's fine.
yeah, wherever you want to take it, if you want to file another order for sure, I'll table it for now, and then when that other order comes in, then we can
Okay.
take that one up.
Just to be fair to them that had asked me to do this, that they like to be here, so that
Right.
would be fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Bacon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to be sure that we formally received the correspondence
We
from
received it last meeting.
Eric, but I don't know that it was entered into the record.
What do you mean? Oh,
Read it out loud.
after reading it out loud? That's what you mean by entered into the record?
Well, we usually at least acknowledge what their recommendation was.
Well, they came in the meeting before that and said the same things.
So we had one meeting under an order that was for the directors to come into a meeting and give
Right.
us their opinions. Then this was filed separately, so now we're under a public hearing.
So I guess
Rules.
they were also invited to the public hearing as well, and they filed that as a response.
Right.
So how different is it than what they said the first time, is what I'm asking.
The only distinction I'm making is that the first time they were not in a public hearing.
I'm not sure that's correct.
They were in the Ordinance Committee meeting, but it
Because we
wasn't.
originally, the order reads itself to invite them to a public hearing.
This one.
Yeah, this
But
order.
the prior one that they came into where we just said, please come in and tell us what your opinion is, wasn't a public hearing.
We had a separate order.
We've had 2 orders on the chickens.
Okay. So what you're saying is, even though they've already weighed in on it, I would still
Well,
have
I'm
to.
just saying that I don't believe, other than the comments that have been made saying that they're not in favor of it, that their opinion and their rationale was put into the record, other than these letters. That's all I'm saying. But if
So
you want the
I'm
people
just,
just
no,
to
no,
go
no.
look
I'm
and
just
read them.
confused. Yeah, I'm a little confused because you just said like there's no other opinion put into the record other than these records. Like,
Well, what I'm
that's
saying
confusing
is,
to me.
what I'm saying is typically you read the opinions of people that send to the committee in writing.
So even, okay.
That's all.
Even so, because and the reason why to me it's confusing is because at full council we don't do that. We just receive. So when it's here, it's different than it would be at full council.
Well, the only distinction I'm making is that it's a public hearing.
I understand that.
That's all. And I just think it should be clear in the record what the opinion of our animal control officer was in public and what the opinion of our director of the Board of Health is.
You know, so again, just because this is semantics and people are playing politics right now, they've already presented, literally on video. You want to say that it's a public hearing and makes it a whole bunch different? I'll read it out loud just to make people happy and make it go through the process. But the reality is they've had the chance to present and to paint it and code it a different way. It's nuanced to me, but it's all right. We can do this. I'll read it out loud for the sake.
I'm just asking for a
If you can.
brief summary of
Thank
what their response was.
You were at
I'm
the
not asking
meeting.
for a
You've
verb-
seen it. You've seen the
verbatim
but you've seen the
reading.
response. No, go ahead. We got verbatim reading here. Let's go.
So we have a number of letters that have been provided to us today as part of the packet for agenda item 3. One is from the planning board. The document from the planning board is really twofold. It's a document, it's a copy of the document that was sent last time this was looked at by council in 2020, where they said that the Holy Planning Board discussed the above referenced zoning text change request, and after consideration of all information and testimony, the board voted 4-0 to recommend to the Ordinance Committee that the zoning text be changed. And then we have another one from the Planning Board now from 2025 that says that it has.
Where are we going with this?
I'm just reading the documents into the record, so we're receiving them and reading them into the
The
record.
chair read the planning board recommendation.
Yeah,
Just summing them all up.
I think we read that, Meg, if I remember right. I think the chair read that. and
He
I think-
did.
Okay, then Linda wants.
I'm now going to the next one. I'm going to go through all of them. So the next one is from Eric Velez. Why backyard chickens should not be allowed. He goes over a number of different practical reasons. Concerns around public health and disease control, specifically salmonella, histoplasmosis, cryptococcis, avian influenza, Newcastle disease, and then waste management and sanitation issues, an increased risk of rodents and predators, noise, quality of life concerns, zoning and property value impacts, existing agricultural zones, naming that they already allow chickens, and then stress and quality of life for urban chickens. And then he does talk about impact on egg production. And so his conclusion is just that the inner city environment is far from ideal for the health, welfare, and productivity of backyard chickens. And also says existing ordinances serve to maintain public health, cleanliness, and neighborhood harmony. Allowing backyards chickens, in his opinion, in the inner city would introduce significant health hazards, sanitation concerns, and zoning conflicts. So his recommendation is that we do not make the change. We also have one from Timothy River, was the director of the Board of Health, and he also came out against it. And he said, in this order, the Board of Health was asked to bring pros, cons, and have a discussion about the effects of changing the ordinance to make backyard chickens allowed in the city. He said, due to the avian flu, the cost of buying eggs has gone up substantially. A positive effect would be that backyard chickens would alleviate this financial burden. But this positive effect, in his opinion, does not outweigh the negative contributions that keeping backyard hens would bring to the city. One thing that does come up in this a number of times is their particular concern around expending additional resources and the additional resources it would cost in order to expand animal control in this way. So it says this is an area that came out at the council budget hearing, and already animal control was scrutinized due to its high cost to the city. So will permit fees cover additional expenses to the animal control department? Was one of the questions that he was hoping would be taken up. And then we have another one from the Holyoke Food and Equity Collective that encourages the city council to revisit the conversation and to not only, is in support of chickens in the Holyoke, but also is looking for specific changes from the former ordinance that was proposed back in 2020. And their specific recommendations are, it says, we strongly urge the council to avoid reintroducing the barriers that previously derailed the ordinance. So specifically, please do not require special permits or public hearings for residents to keep backyard hens. Avoid certified abutter notifications or costly procedural steps that would make compliance financially out of the reach of many. And ensure that renters, small multi-unit dwellings, and community gardeners have access under the ordinance with reasonable guidelines to ensure shared accountability and neighborhood cohesion. And the gardening piece there is definitely new. I looked it up in Municode, and I was looking for, do we have a definition of garden or community garden, which it does not appear that we have, because they have specified here that residents in larger complexes should be encouraged to participate in community gardens, which should be included in an ordinance as a permitted site for hen keeping, along with appropriate guidelines and inspections. That's a very new thought that I haven't heard voiced before, that I think is an interesting way of expanding access, but making sure that it's in an appropriate location.
Mr.
Thank
Chairman?
you. Councilor Devine?
Sorry to interrupt. If I were sitting where you guys are sitting, I'd certainly take those seriously, those letters, for sure. What I was thinking of doing, because, it's an uphill battle, obviously, for these people that would like to do it. But one of the things I was thinking of, what if they were to do it on a case-by-case basis? Like one person, I hate to keep saying Libby, but she's got a beautiful backyard, she's got the education, she knows what she's doing. She would come before Board of Health, the Animal Control, and the Building Department. I think that's the three. And then make her play and let them determine on a yearly basis with inspections if she qualifies to have it in her yard, provided the neighbors don't have a problem, that she's got all the signatures that she needs. So that's what I'm looking at, to kind of get away from that uphill battle that they're facing.
Thank you, Councilor Devine. I also saw Councilor Tessamar-Ramboletti's hand up. Give me 1 second so I can respond to Councilor Devine. So, Councilor Devine, I feel like what you're trying to do there is already kind of in the process of happening. We just got to allow for people to hash out the differences.
Okay.
Because it sounds like if we want to allow a space for someone like Libby that has the backyard and has the space and the education, right now the ordinance is saying no, and right now the letters are all saying no. We got to get to a point where we can say maybe, right? And I feel like until we get everyone to the table actually coming to the meetings instead of writing letters, it would allow for people to get to a point where we can make maybes, right? Mm-hmm. So if for me, I'd be okay with entertaining to table it and allow for the other department heads to come in and show face for this particular issue, because it's a bigger issue if we're just saying no across the board, because that's what it sounds like. But I'll go to Councilor Murphy-Ramboletti because her hand was raised, and I apologize for taking
No,
your
I'm
time.
all set. Thank you.
Okay.
So just the chair?
Counselor Bartley.
Yeah, we all know that the department heads were here at the prior meeting.
Not the public hearing, though, according to what Counselor Bacon
No,
said.
May I just finish?
Yes.
I'll be pretty quick.
No, yeah.
So, just for the public, if they're all interested in this, the Board of Health department head, the building commissioner department head, and most importantly, the animal control member were all present and accounted for, and they answered our questions. They provided written statements and they answered our questions. Now, this is a public hearing, and I'm looking at the gallery, and there's exactly nobody at this public hearing, 0. So, there's nobody online either, 0. Now, we're gonna hear some rhetoric about the public wanted it last time. Well, there were about 8 people here, maximum. 3 or 4 spoke, maximum. The bottom line is the 3 department heads, it's not just an uphill climb. They are vociferously saying this would be mitigate a public health crisis. It would be a horrible idea for the city of Holyoke. That's exactly what I tried to mention at the last full city council meeting when I felt that in the committee report, it was just kind of skimmed over. So I just simply said, the 3 department heads, the health, building, animal control, unanimously said no. Relative to what the finance chair said, I've never heard in city government that we carve out an ordinance for one person to have kind of a template. I've never heard of that in my career. I don't think government can work like that, where you set up a petri dish for one person, whether it's Libby Hernandez or anybody else, and just see if it works. That's not how you write ordinances. You don't write ordinances for one address in the city. It's got to cover, to the best of our ability, the whole city. So I never heard of that. I don't think that's workable. And so if I had a choice in this one, I would just assume close this public hearing and move this to a vote tomorrow, and let's just see where it goes. So my motion is, I'll make a motion now, since I have the floor, is to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
Under discussion. Counselor Givner, is your hand still up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just, I did have some concerns also because the Board of Health and the building department and animal control, it just sounds like they don't have the capacity to deal with this yet. And so I like the idea of there being further conversation about this in the future. I feel like, Holyoke can get there, but it seems like right now we just don't have the capacity in the departments that would be responsible for controlling this to provide enforcement for this, for backyard chickens. I think backyard chickens are a great idea personally, but when the departments who have to actually handle this are at capacity, I just don't know. I don't feel right, forcing it upon them if they just don't have the budget or the capacity to deal with this. So, it seems unfortunately that even if people want it, if we can't enforce, the ordinance, however it's written, that it's going to be more hardship on all involved. So, I think it deserves more discussion. I think I want backyard chickens. I think it's a great idea, but at the end of the day, the people who have to do this work, they're, who are experts in the city, their concerns should be considered. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor McGrath-Smith?
I have a question around the last time we met. I had requested that we have the ordinance language in front of us.
We have that.
And do we?
We have it.
What page is that on?
It's separate, number 3 on the top of it.
It's a different.
I think
sheet.
Jeffrey brought it out to
Yeah,
us
after.
while we were sitting here.
Yeah, it's right there.
Oh, I don't know if I got one, sorry.
You have it right.
Oh, it was in front of there. I didn't see it. My apologies.
No worries.
I mean, we just got it.
It does sound like, I hear what Counselor Givner is saying. I feel like I can't really imagine a time in the city where people will have a different answer coming from the department heads. We do know that chickens are already allowed in our city in the agricultural zones. I would love to know if there have been any issues there. I think I didn't hear anyone say anything to that effect when they came and presented in the last meeting. I understand that there are lots of possible issues, but I do feel like the rhetoric is elevated, and I would be very open to us finding a way to expand it, or doing some sort of pilot and seeing where it could be successful. I think that the letter that we have from the Holyoke Food and Equity Collective is very interesting, in that it names maybe encouraging it to expand to certified community garden sites is one way of extending it to other regions in the city, but it not being open to all homeowners as an initial beginning to seeing if we can expand it and where we can. Because they are already allowed in our city, although only in the agricultural zones. Thank you.
Thank you. So I see Counselor Givner's hand raised. Is that a second time?
Yeah, I was just, I wanted to go back on the comment about how there was new language about having this possible in community gardens, because that puts the onus on the entity that takes care of the community garden. And I think that would be a great way to roll out backyard chickens for the educational component, so people, if more people are exposed to backyard chickens and the idea of, what it takes and, what it takes to set up a chicken coop. Like, sometimes we don't always look at these things as the reality that they are. I have friends with chicken coops that live outside of the city, and it's a lot of work, and it's not cheap to set up either. So, I think having a way to introduce this to the community would be helpful. I think community gardens would be a great place to start something like this, in the more populated areas of the city. But it doesn't sound like that's really on the table right now, but I do think it's an interesting idea.
Thank you. So I guess the only thing I would add before we make the motion on the vote, so ideally you would be able to have a democratic conversation between the department heads and the people that have come in, because people have come in and voiced their opinions, but we're not necessarily having that type of discourse right now. We're not able to build in-betweens or maybes or even situations where we have pilots right now, because literally we're just working off of what is put in front of us. It would be great to have that. It would be awesome to have that, provide that type of sort of discourse to the residents, at least to meet people in between. But that being said, on the motion to vote for this to close the public hearing and also to send it to full council for a vote. Are we doing it separate?
I think motion just to close
Just
the public hearing, Mr. Chair.
First.
That's the
Okay.
only motion I made.
No, you said to send
That's what I
it for a
said.
vote.
No, I said motion to close the public hearing.
All right.
And I seconded it.
Okay. Motion to public hearing. I hear a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, then.
And I'll just make a motion to forward it to the full city council. That's my vote, without a recommendation. Unless somebody wants another motion.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
All right. So that was.
All we have is the old language from
Yeah, just
2020.
My motion.
That's
to
all they
forward
sent to us.
Forward the old language to the city council.
Forward to the old language to full city council without a recommendation is what you're saying.
Well, that's the motion I made. I mean, some
All right.
better one.
He seconded it. You seconded it already, so we got to vote on that. Councilor McGrath Smith.
So I think as it stands, it's a document that is similar to the political reality of 2020. that I think folks who want to see chickens in the city will have a hard time voting for this because the barriers to actually owning chickens that are set by this are so high. And because it sets up two parallel processes where if you're in an agricultural district, you're, allowed to have chickens and there are very few strings attached to that. And if you are not in that agricultural, zone, then you have to pay a lot of money. I'm concerned about, so I guess some basic questions. So I know that the cost for publishing in a local newspaper runs between $250 and $350. I know that just from what our staffer has told us from the CPA committee whenever we have to run notices in the newspaper. Does it cost anything if somebody wants to obtain a permit pursuant to City Ordinance Zoning Section 9.3 or to come for a special permit? Are there costs associated with that? I'm wondering if anyone on the Ordinance Committee knows.
Do we know? Jeff, do we have an answer to that? Cost to applying for a special permit?
That might be something Brenna can address.
I'll make a motion that we just get a communication sent to us for tomorrow night relative to the costs.
Because I think
If that's what you want.
Do I hear a second,
I mean-
just in case?
in many ways, I think the language here, the first time it failed was there were folks who were never going to support it, really, and wanting to support the department heads in their recommendation. And there were other folks who wanted to see it passed, but felt like it would be detrimental to pass it as it was, for this reasons that I think are also in the communication that we have from the Holyoke Food and Equity Collective, that the costs here are too high. So somebody, like we heard from Christine Burns in our last meeting, someone like, her in her area gets to not have to pay this $350 plus whatever the costs are of the special permit and the regular permit. I can imagine there being folks in the city that if we did pass this, they would be pretty upset if they wanted chickens and went and found that it was really going to cost them several $100s just to apply and potentially not get it. I do wonder about if we did pass it, how that would feel to our residents.
Councilor Bacon?
This is going back in time, but when folks came in and talked about setting up the coops and the like for the chickens, and this was 5 years ago,
Yeah.
they said that to start it up cost in the area of $2,000 for the materials, for the coop, the things you needed for the chickens, the feed. I mean, I don't remember all the details, and I'm just remembering that as a general
Okay.
ballpark number, that there were certain startup costs involved in it. And there was definitely a big focus on neighbors being aware if their neighbors wanted to do that. So that would require notice. And the only place you can do it without notice is if you have, of any sort, is if you have 5 acres or more. In the RA district now, you can build a coop in less than 5 acres, but you have to meet all the building setbacks and the heights and the like.
Right.
Otherwise, neighbors can appeal to the building department.
Now, if the animal, control officer is the person who would be doing this? If they came to the house, if the person had created an application and they went to the house and they were signing off on everything being set.
Oh,
Would-
no, it would be a special permit of the council in terms of approving it under that old language.
Okay, and then who would be the approval maker? Who goes to the house?
Would be more than likely,
I don't,
Board of Health?
the
Would it
Board of
be
Health.
the Board of
That's my
Health?
opinion.
That would be a
I don't
assumption.
remember the language exactly.
Another thought around, again, feeling maybe more comfortable expanding is it's hard, I think, when people are going into something new and they think, oh my goodness, what's going to happen if we get 85 applications? We could also create a clause that says that there can only be, 10 new per year. I mean, there's other ways to limit it.
Yes.
so that it feels doable to the folks on the ground who are being asked to do this work. Because I'm trying to figure out,
We have
it's
to
not
have-
just the inspections
we have to
still,
have
so the initial
discourse for
permitting
that.
stuff would
Yeah,
be
we have
supported
to-
by
It would be
the
hard
Board
to
of
make
Health.
We have to
fair.
have discourse for that though. Like we gotta have, because we got a lot of people. We got us counselors at the table right now, and a lot of the questions that you're asking, if they were here, would be answered quickly, right? Like it wouldn't be a guessing game. Jeff wouldn't have to reach out to anyone else or anything like that. And that's kind of what I'm trying to point out. Where it's like whether it gets passed or not, there has to be some form of discourse, so that way we can say that there was a give and take and we had democracy play its role. Right now, it's not necessarily happening.
Right.
So that's the only piece where like I'm kind of at a I don't know. It's kind of perplexing to me that the hen ordinance is one of the most public safety issues here in Holyoke when we got so many other issues that are literally should be at the head of the helm. But Councilor Devine wanted to be.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we need to refer it to backyard hens.
Backyard
That's
hens.
the difference.
Okay. Okay, so
On the motion.
on the motion, which was to send
Just
it
forward the language to the city council without recommendation.
without a recommendation. There was a second.
I
Yes,
think I
there was that was under discussion.
That's it.
On the vote, I guess. Nobody's online. All in favor?
Aye.
No.
No. That's 3 noes, 2 ayes, but we could do
So,
roll call vote if you
Motion
want.
to table.
Well, so you don't want to forward it at all?
They voted 3 no,
Well, then they make another motion then.
so I
Thanks,
did.
Patty. Make another, what do you want to do with the order?
I made,
Council Devine, real quick, what she did
Minority
make.
report.
Huh?
That's true.
Minority
There can
report.
always be a minority report.
so
That's
you
true.
wanted.
If they were gonna bring it tomorrow,
Okay.
the 2 people that voted yes would do a minority report. At least that's the way it used to go.
Well, right now, my motion got defeated, I think. I think 3 voted no, so
Yeah.
what's your motion?
If I may, my,
She voted to table first. Do I hear a second?
Well, wait a
I'll
minute,
second.
you're,
She first. I'm not gonna.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Thank
If
you.
people wish to discuss further, I'm not wed to it.
I'd be
Councilman
interested in revising the language. I don't want to send it as is because it's old, it's stale. I think that we would need to revise some of this language for it to even represent the current conversation that constituents, out of full respect, 'cause we have constituents who are asking us to look into it. I think even just to respond to the things that we've heard them say, I think we can give it a little more time.
Do I hear a second? Under discussion, Councilor Murphy Ramboletti, I saw your hand raised again. Are you ready now? My bad.
No,
Hello?
never mind.
You're killing me right now, Smalls. All right. So, the vote was to change the language and I guess table it for another ordinance committee meeting.
can I make a suggestion then?
Councilor Bartley.
Why, if you want to change the language, why don't you make a motion to send it to the law department to amend the language, and then work with the law department on amending the language? Would that not be a reasonable motion?
It would be reasonable, but I think that, and I hear you, Councilor Bartley, but I think that it's not just Councilor McGrath Smith or myself or anyone working directly with the law department. We would need to incorporate the department heads that are going to be involved within this process. So,
So my motion will be, just so we can, I mean, you guys want to run this stuff, but if the motion would be to refer this to the law department.
Just trying to serve
set
the
up a meeting with whomever wants to work with the law department on this, including anybody else, Mr. Bellas. You don't have to do it here. You can come up with a draft in the law department and then come back here with draft language.
I'm happy to.
Well,
let me hear a second first so we could do
I'm
it.
just trying
well, we do,
to, with the agenda, but-
so if we are,
Agreed.
however, if we are asking the law department to draft up legal language, we just revised our ordinances to say that we have to be letting them know what we want. Not just that we
You're right, yeah,
want
I apologize for that. You're
something
Right.
else.
You're right. Well, okay.
That's all.
Okay, well then, I guess the 3 of you are gonna need to tell the law department what it is that you want at this point. So maybe you just wanna table it
So-
and come up with another plan next meeting or something. Maybe that's the best play.
Okay, Councilor McGrath Smith.
Yeah, my motion would be to table it. I'm happy to reach out to the law department, the Board of Health, and come in with a potential draft revision for next time for discussion.
Do I hear a second? All in
Okay.
favor?
I'll table it.
Aye. Aye. All right.
Aye. Yep.
There you go. Awesome. Great job. I appreciate you guys. That's democracy. That's how you make it work. So I entertain a motion to take up item 4.
No move.
All in favor? Aye. Item 4 was filed by then Council Puello that we consider crafting an ordinance stipulating requirements for expenditure of funds of the police events, special events line and requirements. Example, committee organized event, private business participating, alcohol served, who is profiting. So I believe we should have language. Maybe entertain. Other discussion? Anybody have any comments before? Councilor Bacon?
So I'd just like to make a motion that the committee recommends this to the city council for approval.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Bartley.
We've had, if I can just follow up.
Yes, under discussion.
We've had this before us for quite a while now. We've tabled it a few times for review and consideration, and I think was a little bit further clarified in the budget hearing with the police chief the other day, and I think this is all consistent with what he was saying and what we have been saying. So I think it looks good.
Anyone else?
No? I think we're good on this.
All right. So on the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
No.
Chair.
Go ahead, Councilor. I am at Councilor Jeff.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind you that at the last meeting, you asked me to invite representation from the license board to
Oh.
talk about this.
Perfect. There we go. My apologies, Alex.
Is he on?
She's online. I want to make sure she has the time before we go on for the vote. Councilor McGrath-Smith, hold on a second. Has a question.
Thank you so much for joining us. I wasn't sure you are on Zoom. I see you now. Thank you.
I am.
Our question initially was underneath A3, it says the committee must submit event proposals to the city of Holyoke for approval by the police department, detailing the nature of the event, its purpose, and other considerations such as road closures. We were wondering what is the role of the licensing board versus the police department in determining what details are necessary and like where it's, in terms of how it falls, where is it going first? Who is deciding what? And do you feel like this is going to create enough room for the licensing board's current process?
So the license board only determines detail when alcohol is involved.
Okay. And so if the licensing board has an application in front of it for like a single day permit, if it has alcohol, do you decide, or is there an automatic protocol of it has alcohol, thus it has to have X detail?
No, the license board decides on how big the event is, how many people will be attending, if it's a public versus a private event. Anything over 100 people, the board can mandate police detail. But if it's a public event and the application says 50 people, they can also mandate detail for the event. I know with the new police chief, at our last Flex Squad meeting, they are ordering a lot of events to have detail, regardless if there's alcohol involved or not.
Is this a process where you sign off on this as a board and then send it to the police department, or is it the permit's unapproved until both have looked at it and both have signed off?
So when there's alcohol involved in the license board orders detail, I won't release the permit until I have like a roll call confirmation that a police officer has been hired.
Thank you.
So I guess I have a question. If there is no alcohol involved and they're asking for the detail, is there policy on that currently? Or is that just like because he said so or because they said so?
Because the police chief says so. He's the one ordering the detail for events that are non-alcohol.
Okay. So in the past, it wasn't like that, is what I'm hearing.
No, this is something new, since the new police chief, that they just started ordering detail for pretty much every single event that has happened.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Bacon.
Thank you. So I just want to clarify that this particular order isn't around controlling the process of how it happens. It's just simply about the way the money, the public monies that the taxpayers pay are expended. That if it's a private event, the private people pay for it. If it's public, it has to be determined to be public to come out of the public treasury. That's really all this is. But thank you for the clarification from the license board. That's
Thank you.
good to know.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you. So
On the motion?
yes, on the motion to, I guess, approve the language as is and forward to full council. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. I am the only one.
So
It'll be 4-1.
4-1,
Yes.
motion to take up item 5.
Second.
I think she might be here for 5 too. I'm not sure.
I am.
Okay.
For 5.
Thank you for being here for 5 too. So, motion to take up item 5.
I made the motion.
Yes, I didn't hear a second. I was waiting for.
I second
You
it.
did. My bad. I didn't hear you.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 5 was filed by myself. Councilors Rivera, order that the Honorable City Council amend Ordinance 38-73, enumeration of prohibited noises, drums, loudspeakers, and similar devices to read the use of drum, loudspeaker, or any other sound-producing instrument or device for the purpose of attracting attention, any election campaign, performance, show, or sale, or display of merchandise by the creation of noise, except where authorized by special permit to be issued by the licensing board with recommendations from the chief, who shall make reasonable and rules and regulations therefore. So I particularly filed this order mostly around the new guidelines that kind of are in conflict with the actual sound permitting ordinance, where you can actually apply for a permit up to a certain time. So for me, it was just trying to find a more democratic process as to how best to address the permitting of sound permits. And because the licensing board kind of, when you go in front of the licensing board to shut down the street or to do any of those things, this is kind of, for me, it kind of make more sense to keep it within that role, because they're already doing that work, with still some of the reasonable rules and regulations that could be enforced by the chief, which allows for anyone applying to actually have a chance, in a sense, to speak up for themselves and have a body of 3 to make a decision on whether or not this makes sense. It also calls into question for me how we're doing our tourism planning committee stuff, not committee stuff, but like the initiatives that we're pushing forth, and how these new rules or regulations that are not necessarily under policy or under ordinance may conflict with what we're kind of what our mission is as a community moving forward. And Alex, I'm glad you're here. Thank you. I think for me, some of the questions are like, how much more of a burden would this possibly be, or does this kind of fall in line with some of the stuff you guys already do, if anything?
So I wouldn't call it a burden. It would just be an extra permit that the license board takes on.
Okay.
I guess my question to you would be, would the license board have to set up the rules and regulations?
I would still run it with the rules and regulations that are set forth by the chief.
Okay.
But it's just if the licensing board would like to make any additions or amendments to the rules and regulations, they kind of have the power to do so. That
it.
way, the power, and I don't want to say power, the delegation of the permit is, how do you say it, diverse between different bodies instead of just one particular individual making a call on their own. 1 second, Councilor Bacon.
Thank you. So is this order taking that approval away from the chief? I mean, what is the current ordinance?
Right now, it says that it's up to the chief to make particular approval with the rules and recommendations, with reasonable rules and regulations.
That's the current
That's the current one.
ordinance.
So now it's dispersing the delegation, right? Because I don't want to continue to say power, and splitting it amongst the chief and as well as the licensing board.
Doesn't that sort of blur the lines of who somebody has to ask? So they have to go to the license board and the chief?
No, the same way any other committee, like when cannabis comes in, they have to go to the license board or whatever permitting agency.
And
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 the
somewhere
chief,
else.
and the fire, yes.
Right now, they only have to go to one.
Right, but the only one has the one power of making that decision.
Okay.
So for me here, it allows, it makes more sense to, and the licensing board can side with the chief every time if they want to, but at least ultimately it makes it a situation where it's not solely on one person, and it allows for the licensing commission to give someone else the opportunity to kind of speak up or make their case. Like if they need a permit past 9 o'clock or need a permit past 8 o'clock on a certain date, they have the opportunity to make their case and say, hey, we're falling in line with the new cultural district or with this, and we're doing this particular event. And the chief can make his reasonable reasons or case that they would like to make as to why it should remain 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, and it allows it for the public or whomever it is that's hosting this to present their case to the licensing commission and also have their words heard.
Are you addressing a particular problem with this?
No, I'm just trying to see how we can fall in line with what our economic and tourism plan is in the future, if that makes sense to me at least. Because if we're talking about bringing people to the community and to the city, and we do it through various different events, it's kind of counterproductive to kind of like shimmy someone into a particular box. There are a lot of different new patios that are open up throughout the whole city. I know that Wyckoff has theirs, and I know that the Elks' building went out too as well. There are a variety of different entities themselves that may need a permit past a certain time, and it makes sense that they are addressing it in front of a body of people versus just one particular individual. At least that's the thought process for me.
I hear you.
Any other questions? Councilor McGrath-Smith?
Just in terms of syntax, the language there says at the very end, except where authorized by special permit to be issued by the city licensing board with recommendations from the chief, who shall make reasonable rules and regulations therefore. Just to clarify, is the who the licensing board or is who the chief?
I would say that it could be the chief in the beginning, right? But as the licensing boards are in the conversation, so you start with the basics, but then it's making it like we do, right? The rules and regulations that come forward, and then we make amendments to those rules and regulations. But again, it could all be hashed out with regards to if there's too much confusion. Councilor Givner?
Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry, I had to run out for a second. But I'm wondering, how this equates, how this measures up to our noise ordinance, because it seems like this is completely separate, and I feel like they could be merged somehow. I'm not sure if we need a whole. I don't know. I'm a little confused about how the loudspeaker permits are given and why they don't fall in line with the noise ordinance. And if the noise ordinance needs to be changed to have different hours, then I feel like that's what we should be looking at.
Yes, that would be a different topic. This is a different, so this is not necessarily a new order. This is just amending a current order that is aside from the noise ordinance. So you're correct in that they're not necessarily in line, but it's
Okay.
just, I mean, you could change one and then the other might supersede the other, but this is the one that for me kind of makes sense in trying to go in that process in the future to then talk about if we want to unilaterally change the noise ordinance, because my understanding right now it's 11 o'clock. If it's changing it to a lower number, then it's doing that by ordinance, not by an individual decision that's not gone through the democratic process, at least for me.
Understood.
But everyone doesn't have to agree with me. That's fine. Anyone else? So that being said, I guess for me, I would have to make the motion myself because it sounds like
Well, I'm not
What's
sure what is
the
it.
motion?
I'm trying to
You
get.
want to
If,
table it in order to work with the licensing board or the law department to draft some language?
I was gonna say draft some language and also table it to work with the licensing board and even bring in the chief of police too as well to make sure that everyone's on the same page.
All right, I'll make a motion to table it for a future date.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Thank
So
you.
we're tabling it to have the police chief come in
Chief and the licensing board
and the license board?
just to have the hash out.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, somebody has to be the decider.
Yes.
yeah, makes sense. Motion take up, where are we, sorry.
6.
Do you want to take up 6 and 7 as a package or separately? It makes, actually, 6,
How
7,
about
and 8, they're all the different
6,
schedules.
7, and 8. I'll second that.
So all in favor?
Aye.
6 was filed by Councilor Murphy Ramboletti, order that the city examine and study the Schedule A increases that were recommended by the salary study completed in 2014 so that we can implement salary adjustments that are competitive and more aligned with neighboring municipalities. Item 7, order that the Schedule B and C of Ordinance 2-35 be updated as appropriate with competitive salaries to attract and retain employees. Item 8, order that Schedule B, compensation of elected officials of Chapter 2 of the Code of Ordinances be amended as follows. City clerk, $90,000. I have Councilor Tessa Murphy Ramboletti for item 6 and 7, and then Councilor Bartley for item 8. Madam President, Murphy Ramboletti, would you like to expand on these items? I know it's been a while that we've spoken on them, but
I mean, if you want me to, like, reiterate everything, I guess I can. I feel like this has come up a lot on many different agendas, so I don't really feel the need to rehash everything. I do think, for me, I'm grateful that you guys are discussing it, just because I know that budget season is close, and so if there's anything that can get changed before then, great. If not, it is what it is. But I just think the timing of it is important. I would defer to the personnel department to talk about the specifics. I'm not going to restate why I filed this order.
no, you don't have to.
Discussed it many times, but thank you for bringing it up again, and hopefully we can just keep this moving forward and in a timely fashion. But if folks have things to add from the city's perspective, I would welcome that. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam President. All right, Kelly.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for having me.
Good evening.
I'm going to read because I'm going on a 12-and-a-half-hour day now, so I don't want to forget any of my thoughts, so I typed it up so I wouldn't forget. So I'm proposing to increase the ranges for Schedule A, which are ordinance positions. I know the ranges were updated in 2021, and that was from my understanding a 2014 salary study. So even though they were updated a few years ago, they're still outdated. I believe in order to recruit future professionals and retain our current professionals, we need to increase these ranges to be competitive and be able to offer adequate salaries. I know the council has been open to hiring people above the mid when we've come to you and requested it, but sometimes we lose candidates when we have to wait 3 months to get permission to increase the salary offer. So hoping to prevent that with future candidates. As you all know, Holyoke, we have some of the hardest workers here, and we have some of the hardest jobs, and I believe in order to attract and retain our current talent, we need to stay competitive. And you'll see there's a couple positions that are below the current ranges proposed, and I'm not proposing to increase them this year. The mayor is rolling out slowly but surely performance assessment increases. The first formal ones will be with the AFSCME union, which is formerly PSA, and they will get increases based on their supervisor's rating. And so I'm hoping that when we roll it out fully, that's when they'll fall in line with the ranges that we're proposing. Did you want me to stick to Schedule A first and then go to B and C?
I guess we could do A first, and if there's any questions from anyone on committee, feel free to let me know. And any other counselors that are on the outside of the committee but still are part of the council, feel free to let me know too as well. Raise your hand online, and I'll try to get to you as fast as I can. But you go ahead, Kelly, I guess. Start A and then
Yeah,
B.
I'll just flag and then you could ask me whatever questions. But some of the stuff that's not on here is that I did Chicopee, West Springfield, and Westfield because they're similar in size and they're around the area. So I thought that would give a good snapshot. Chicopee said they don't have ranges, they just have salaries. So I'm assuming they did independent contracts similar to what Westfield does with some of the folks there, and you'll see the notes on there. It was hard to get information from Chicopee, so we used their budget. I know there was some turnover there also. And then there were, hold on a minute. West Springfield has some employees who are above their range also, and that's because of their longevity. So you'll see that they have some people that make more than what the range is. And then I believe it was West Springfield also doesn't have full-time solicitors. I believe they're part-time, so that doesn't reflect full-time hours. And then you'll notice that the new proposal for Schedule A does not have most of the library staff that were on the original Schedule A because they voted to go into NAGE. So the director, assistant director, and finance manager will remain on Schedule A, and all others are moving to NAGE.
Any questions? Oh, Councilor McGrath-Smith?
Just a practicality. So where we see, the mid, and the max, if somebody is like the first person, admin assistant city council, currently the salary is 50, the new mid is 52, max is 61, min is 42. So then how would we necessarily know where that person currently employed would now be in that range if we accepted the new schedule?
So yeah, I said previously that I don't expect like someone to move up to even the min right now or the mid, but I hope that they would get there through the performance assessment when their supervisor, most of who, well not all, but a lot is the mayor that supervises these folks here. But that's my vision at least, is that they grow, because I know that.
So it would be over time.
Yeah.
But most of these positions, but not all of them, might represent, they might move up to the min.
Correct.
Effectively.
Yeah.
But there are some positions where someone is, sort of closer to the mid already.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
I didn't do this anticipating that it was going to happen this budget July 1st. I know there's a lot going on, and it's kind of like, you know, when you're going to have a baby, no time is the best time to plan. So I figured like it's been in Councilor Rivera's jacket, so let's get it out and discuss it.
Councilor Reagan?
Thank you. I appreciate you bringing it forward, and I do appreciate you acknowledging that we just got it, because I am one that,
Yeah, and
Tends to
Jeffrey
look-
sent it Friday, right?
yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes. And so I do appreciate that. One of my questions is, were any grades changed on Schedule A from the prior Schedule A? Because we don't have a side-by-side.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I can send that to you because I
That
do
would be
have
great.
it in a large spreadsheet. But so the only grade that changed was I put the human resource, which will now be called the human resource director, up a grade, and then the new positions I added, but I asterisked them so that you know that they're not currently in their what's being proposed with the municipal modernization.
And I'm sorry, I'm just not seeing it. Which grade is that under?
The person.
Oh, I see it now. Yeah.
But I do have a side by side, and I'm happy to send that. It was just too big to.
I hear you. I hear you. Thank you.
You're welcome. And the treasurer collector, but that's aligning with the Modernization Act too.
Well, right, there's a couple, 2 or 3 positions in here that don't exist yet, so we have to consider that.
Yeah, that's why I asterisked them. I try to make it.
And I
as-
appreciate that you have marked it up.
Okay.
You want to move to B and C?
Yes. Yes, you can go ahead and move on to B and
Yeah,
C.
B and C.
If there are no more questions on A.
Okay, so B, I proposed I crossed out the treasurer since it won't be elected anymore. And I proposed the mayor get an increase. I know, we all know how hard he works, but regardless of who's in the position, I believe it should be increased significantly. You could see the surrounding areas who don't have as big challenges as Holyoke. I know we're a small city, but we do have big challenges. And he also supervises some department heads that make more than him, and in some cases double. But again, regardless who's in the position, I believe it should be a higher salary. And the city clerk, I know that's part of the next item agenda that Councilor Bartley had proposed previously. I just thought I would add it to be aligned.
So it's part of the
Yeah,
package at
yep.
this point.
And then the counselors and council president, I bet if you all are probably going on 8.5-hour days like me, so I bet if you divided the hours of work that you do for the council outside of, being in here, you probably get paid less than minimum wage. And it's my understanding that the council stipend has not been increased for over 20 years.
To quote Councilor Jourdain, he said, "This is the most important, less than minimum wage job he ever had."
I would
But that's
agree.
not why we do it.
Right, exactly. And I don't think that's why any of us that are here working in the city do it. We know it's hard work and we're dedicated, but, you also deserve to get paid for your hard work. And I do believe it's way overdue, and I understand that it puts you all in a uncomfortable position since it is election season, but again, just like having a baby, it's no perfect time to plan. So I thought, well, we could adjust all of them. We get them out and update the schedules.
Thank you. Any questions?
And excuse me, obviously, it would probably take effect next
Next election season?
Yeah.
Or whatever, next.
January.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any questions from anybody in the committee? Anybody on the line? No other counselors? Counselor Devine?
Just to go back to the other thing about city council, I recall it was 2000, the year 2000.
Oh, wow.
Microphone.
Thank you, Jeff. The year 2000, we were making $750. Yeah, it's 750, yes, and it was raised to 10,000. So it's been since then that it's still the same. But it's certainly not anything that, I don't want to speak for everybody, but you bring it up. I'm not gonna.
I don't care. I'll say it. We need a raise.
I do. I agree. I mean, you guys, you all work hard and you're here often away from your families. And I mean, if you look at the other cities, I'm not sure their structure, how often they meet, how dedicated they are. I don't know any of that. But I believe if we want to attract and retain counselors also, we need to.
Kelly, excuse me, it was 7,500.
Oh, 7,500. I was like,
a
ooh,
big
750 to 10,000 is a big jump.
Whoa, you guys are
Thank you.
gangsta, 750. Councilor McGrath-Smith.
So is our goal to receive this? Is it to table it, to come back for further discussion later? What's the motion
I think
here?
it's been tabled multiple times. It's my understanding. I think this is, we've had the conversation. She's produced the data. I think maybe send it to full council to take a vote on if they want to take a vote on it. If not, then the conversation goes back to square one, is my understanding. But Councilor Murphy-Ramboletti has her hand raised.
I'm sorry, it was just more of a clarifying question. If you guys, I just wanted to see if you guys needed any other language, like either from anyone. I just want to make sure.
Thank you. Councilor McGrath-Smith.
My reason for why I think it probably makes sense to table it for now is only because there's a lot of, it's up in the air, some of these positions that are named in here, and I think that we need to see if those new positions are created before we can then have a true sense of whether or not we want to recommend this for the next budget cycle. But if I'm wrong, I'd love to hear it.
Councilor Murphy-Ramboletti, your hand is raised again.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll stop after this, I promise. I guess,
It's okay.
I just, if we are gonna push this to the next budget, which is well within everyone's right to do. It's just, I don't know what has changed from this time since the time before, and if there's like more information, we're never gonna get it before the next budget cycle. So I guess I'm just, I'm not exactly sure what else is needed. I think that was kind of like following up my last question, and I guess I don't truly understand what else is needed, but that's just me, and I'm not on the committee, so you guys do what you want. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McGrath-Smith.
And to clarify, the goal would be for us, if we moved this to council recommendation, it would be for not this current, not for FY '25, but for FY '26, for the next year?
You could clarify that.
Yeah, my
Kelly.
recommendation would be for January.
Yeah.
Or the new election season, or, counselors.
Okay.
Councilor Bacon.
Thank you. Yes, so this has been tabled for a long time, but we were waiting for the side-by-sides, and we were waiting for the data that we received on Friday. And so I don't see the emergency to push it forward tonight for the meeting on Tuesday. Once we have our meeting on Tuesday, we'll have more clarity, and I don't think any of these would reasonably go into effect before January anyway. And I think there may be a number of proposed revisions to these documents. While I appreciate the work and the comparisons that has gone into it.
So what I'm hearing is that if this were to be taken up in August or September and then voted on then, this would still be in time for and I'm just saying January because that's the expectation or hope.
Well, it could be.
Could be. Because it's been tabled since 2023, just so everyone knows. And if we're going to always entertain new information, every year there's going to be new information with new department heads and new people and new plans and new initiatives.
Well,
So, I guess it's at the will of the body, but just so we know, if we want to put a deadline to it, eventually we got to put a deadline to it. because I think I got here, the earliest date is 4/25/23, and that's literally more than 2 years. And then the other one is 3/27/24, so it's about a year and some change. So, I mean, just to point that out. But the motion. Oh, Councilor Devine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the things I'd like to point out is, and certainly ask the committee, have any of you ever had to wait 12 years for a raise? Our city clerk has not had a raise in 12 years, and I think it's time.
That one is item 8, though. Right now we're on 6 and 7.
And I,
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you had the whole.
Yeah, we took those two together,
The
but
clerk is on 8.
we haven't.
On 7.
We haven't. Well, I guess since we're
Yeah.
mentioning item 8, let me
Yeah.
dole down to 6 and 7. Let's go to 8 real quick. Councilor Bartley, you filed it. The clerk is online with regards to, and I know you did it out of just, you thought that it made sense, that it was time. But just in case you wanted to add to anything, because you wrote you filed the order for it.
Yeah, I filed the order, I did, and we had a good discussion last time. I thought it was strange that a couple of councilors on this committee didn't want to, they want to start July 1st. That's never what happens for elected position. So it'd be after the election. I don't know where the July 1st is coming from, so that's been stopped. And then the question becomes, in my opinion, Brenna's a friend, she's a colleague, some of us served with her. I know I did anyhow, and I know Linda did. And I'd want to make this as unanimous as possible. And speaking to Brenna as I do regularly, I put in the number based upon Brenna's suggestion. I don't know if there's an appetite for all the counselors to want to get behind that. So I think there would be an appetite to give Brenna a salary adjustment. It may not be for $5,000. No matter what it is, it should start January 1st, not this July 1st. I don't know how that was even contemplated. So the question becomes, up to $5,000 would be the max. But I would certainly, there's certain counselors that are veteran counselors that have such a high regard for Brenna, but I don't think they want to get to 5,000. So I don't know where they want to be, but I'd like to just move this out of committee, send it forward without a recommendation, other than for sure, I want us to have it be commenced in January, not July 1st.
without a recommendation or with?
So the only recommendation I would have is that it was, the salary adjustment would start January 1st. I'm not really interested in making a recommendation, because I know there's good counselors they're just good friends, and I want to make this as unanimous as possible. I don't want this to be controversial or have a big battle on the floor, where I thought this was going to go based upon the last discussion we had, which was just unfortunate. But January 1st, I think if we can all get behind that, Brenna's behind that now, then the question becomes, what's the dollar amount? And, I'm willing to take suggestions from anybody if they want to make a motion. If they don't, then I would just want to move it forward for a vote tomorrow.
Councilor, Kelly.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, I also shared Friday, some other clerks' data, and I think if you averaged, like, the cities that I'm comparing in my other study, it is 90,000, or it's very close to it. And I think, to Patty's point, the clerk has gotten one raise in 12 years. And she deserves it. We had a special election, we have to pull these things together pretty quickly, and with all the new things like the mail-in voting, then the early voting, and I feel like it's a much bigger job than it once was.
So, with that being said, Councilor Bacon.
So I hear you on the salary range, but within the last, and don't test me on the timeline, but I want to say maybe 3 years, we did adopt a law that did provide her with an increase in her salary. It was a law that we had not previously adopted. I can't remember how much it affected her salary, but I want to say it was like around 3,000 or 3,500 that did bump her salary up at that time. And we do pay a extra $5,000 for the work she does for the council, in addition to her base salary, correct?
Yes.
Just,
She has
so,
a
I mean, it
stipend.
wasn't a regular raise per se, but we did adopt that law and it did go into her
The
base.
election commission too, is there a stipend for that?
I don't
I don't
know.
I don't know. I do know there's one for the council. I want to point out something that other cities do, and I don't know like if we're open to this ever, but West Springfield does get a 2 to 3 annual increase
Within the ordinance?
annually. So every year it seems like they get a cost of living increase.
they
The,
just-
the clerk, yep.
They wrote it into the ordinance?
Well, I don't know the language, but that's
yeah.
the information she shared with me.
So the city clerk actually had her hand raised. Brenna, would you like to expand, if anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify Councilor Bacon's point. The extra stipend that was added in, I think it was probably 5 years ago, was $1,200.
Okay.
And that is for being on the Board of Registrars.
Okay. I
And
couldn't remember
the-
all the specifics. Thank you.
Right, and then the city council stipend is $4,000, which has been $4,000 for probably, I don't even know, 25 years, 30 years, and there is clerks that, get an increase in that quite often as well, and that's not something I'm asking for. And I guess my last point too would just be, I don't get a cost of living increase every year like most of the department heads do. Back when I first started, my salary was quite higher than most of my colleagues' salaries, and now they're all far past me. I've been there for 12 years. I know like the Parks and Rec just hired a new director, and I think his starting salary is going to be higher than what I make. I'm one of like the veteran department heads in the city now, and I don't think that my $5,000 raise, one in 12 years is a very unreasonable ask. So I would just really appreciate if the council would consider the 5,000, because there's not going to be another opportunity for this position to be given a raise again for another 4 years.
Thank you. Councilor Jenny Rivera.
And I just want to state that I feel we should move forward with 6, 7, and 8. As the city does have the issue where we can't keep employees. And then once we cannot keep employees, what happens is, this is what happens at the city council meeting. Everything gets tabled and tabled and tabled because we won't have a department head, or somebody just lost an employee. They get the training here, they leave to another city, and they're making more money. We can't get police officers because other cities are offering them more money. So, 12 years, I would have left a long time ago. So I think we should move forward with this, and if it's like Councilor Bartley said, January 1st, burn us on for January 1st, then we should just go ahead and move on with it, because all this tabling, these jackets keep just getting full, and it feels like we're not doing our jobs, but because we don't have department heads, people are leaving us. So I feel we should just go on and move on, because tabling just doesn't work, and it doesn't let us move on here either in city council.
So, real quick, that being said, is that a motion to take 6, 7, and 8, because they're already together, for a vote to full council, or
With recommendation,
with recommendation?
that's what I heard.
Do I hear a second? I'll second
I'll
it.
second it.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
What's the motion?
The motion is to move all 3 to full council with recommendation of the committee.
For positions we don't even have yet.
Oh, okay, wait, that's the motion, that's the motion.
Yes, that's the motion.
I'm happy to have it tabled in council too. But I have heard folks sort of say that,
That's the motion, we'll take a vote, whatever it is, but I don't want to do it, I'd rather just do an individual roll call, please.
Individual roll call then. Councilor McGrath-Smith,
yes.
Councilor Bartley,
No.
Counselor Bacon,
No.
Counselor Jenny Rivera,
Yes.
and Counselor Israel Rivera, yes. So 3-2, with the recommendation from full council sent to the full council for a vote.
And Mr. Chair, just a point of order?
Yes, Counselor
Yeah.
Bartley.
Can we take the, tomorrow, just take both individually?
Sure.
I don't want them in a package.
Sure.
Thank you.
Remind me of that again tomorrow, because I got a lot going on.
I'll happily do that.
Motion to take up item 9.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Real quick, should we do 9 and 10 as a package?
Whatever you, if the chair wants that, sure. To
Because,
suspend, take 9, 10 as a package.
do you hear a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item 9 is order that the Honorable City Council add a section to Holyoke Code of Ordinances titled Human Relations. And then item 10, order that the Personnel Department and Law Department work in conjunction to update the following ordinances to reflect a modern human resources department. Actually, that's not supposed to be a package, but let's do 10 first for Kelly. Is that for the Personnel Department one?
Yeah, it's just, we started discussing changing it from personnel to human resources, since I think I'm only one of 2 in the state that I know of, that I'm aware of, called personnel still. And so the law department identified all the areas and where it says personnel that would be changed to human resources, and that's what they referenced here. And I believe it was also discussed in the Modernization Act to add that language in during.
Go ahead, Councilor Bacon.
So I read this very quickly, but all this verbiage that we're looking at, is all of it simply a Word document substitute for the name throughout?
Correct.
Is that all this is? There's
Yeah.
no other substantive
No
changes
changes,
made?
nope, just the name from Personnel Director to Human Resources Director, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. on the
And that's
motion.
what 9 includes
No,
also?
9 is a separate order
This
that I
is human
filed.
relations.
Yeah, I filed this one a long time ago, and I thought it
Oh.
coincided with that one, and I just realized.
Oh, it's something different?
It's something different,
Oh,
yes.
all right.
So we can
So we're
take
on
a
item 10 only?
Yeah, we could do 10 now, and just vote on that one separate. My apologies.
Just changes, as I said, that's a motion, number 10, just change it to human resources. So limit the changes from personnel to human resources pursuant to the suggestion.
Here, a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Then
And number 9,
number 9,
Yeah.
I could give a leave to withdraw for now.
so moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then we're on item 11.
Motion to take 11 off the table?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Item 11 was filed by Councilor Murphy Ramboletti, March 18th, 2025. Order that the City Council update its ordinances in Chapter 86, Traffic and Vehicles, to include language that clarifies rules and restrictions related to the city's street sweeping schedule. Councilor Murphy Ramboletti, if you want to expand, but I also see we have a guest, Michael Williams, with us too as well, who did communicate with us via email. But yes, go ahead.
Me or?
I mean, you can start because you filed the order, but we can go with Mike directly if you want, whichever one.
I mean, so I'll just say, and then I'll let Mike take it over. Later in 2024, the mayor put together a meeting to discuss the street sweeping program. The no parking signs along Maple, High, and Main Street were not being complied with. There were a lot of reasons why that we discussed, damaged, missing, faded signs, lack of enforcement. Veolia agreed to bear the cost for replacement signs. DPW staff would complete the installation, which has actually happened. And then during this whole conversation, we discussed with the mayor, Veolia, that it made more sense to change the day within the ordinance from Friday to Thursday. This change, it does allow for better cleaning of the downtown areas, and if the ordinance change is actually made, our next step would be to coordinate with the police department for enforcement. you know, and just do what we can to notify the public that the date is changing. So I believe that hopefully the changes have been presented to you. It's truly nothing major, and I will let Mike take it from here. The signs themselves have been both printed in English and in Spanish. This is just to update the ordinance so that it is more enforceable. But with that, I will let Mike add anything he would like, and thank you for being here.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us. I also have Jason Swain. He's I think he's on as an attendee. He's the local project lead, so I have him here as well if there's any questions for him as well. But this started previous to the transfer from Jason to myself. And as Tessa mentioned, it's here literally just to allow us to better clean the downtown regions, High Maple and Main. And it was brought to our attention, and this was an effective way that collectively we came up with the idea to repost all these new signs, you know, make it more business friendly and resident friendly for having English and Spanish, so it can reflect the community as fully. So if you have any questions for me, happy to answer them, and just happy to understand if there's any hesitations or reservations with this.
I do not believe so. I have a email that they sent out to us, and if you want, I could read it.
I don't have legal language in front of me. So,
Councilor Reagan, go ahead.
So can we adopt the recommendation and request legal language to amend the ordinance? Because we don't have it yet, right?
I would
well,
do
how
it.
do we have that when we have a
review
rule
it.
that says 48 hours? You just have the legal language. How do you do that?
No, I'm just saying we'll get it and deal with it down the road. We'll request the legal language from legal, it'll come back here, and then we'll send it to council.
Is that your motion?
Yeah.
Second. I didn't know what you were saying.
Under discussion, real quick. So just to clarify, right now what we're gonna do is we're gonna accept it and expect legal language to come for next ordinance meeting.
Beautiful. All
Right.
That sounds good.
For the next ordinance meeting.
I didn't know you
Right.
were making a
Yes.
motion on that. Yeah, I agree.
Okay,
Yeah.
that works. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, great job. Motion to
Hold
adjourn.
on.
Time out.
I wanted to make a motion to reconsider in table 6 and 7. I just can't sit with moving it to council
I'll
yet.
second that.
Okay, second, anyone under discussion?
I just think that looking over it, there are pieces that I feel really good about, but I don't feel good about the fact that we didn't really go line by line. And there are some pieces in here that in general I really support, but there's a number that I'm not sure I can. And I honestly know that tomorrow's a packed agenda. I don't think in council it's going to be a productive conversation if we also have to hash all of that out in council versus in ordinance.
So we're
And I had
table-
also requested the side by side on A.
Yeah,
all right,
I think
so
we need that.
That's a table on Councilor Rivera.
Well, can it be forward without the new positions?
Well, my motion would allow, the potential raise for the clerk to go to be considered tomorrow, but would keep the others back for another month so that we could consider an ordinance and really go line by line with the side by sides before we send it to council.
And we'd still be able to address it before the new year.
Before January.
Before
We have
January.
Plenty of time.
All right,
I seconded the motion to reconsider.
so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And
Anyone
then
opposed?
We need then a
One no.
second motion needs to be made to table.
Yes, and a motion to table 6 and 7 in committee.
Okay, well, real
Second.
quick, that was 4-1 on that, and then the motion to table there was a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay,
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor? Aye. Everyone have a good night.